When it comes to productivity and self-help advice, you might think that there's a secret tool that will help you take control of your day or a single book that can help you change your life. I'm not so sure that's the case. But what if there was something that connected everything together? What if there was a secret foundation that everything else rested upon in order to work? I think I may have an idea on what that actually is, and it might not be what you think. So I've been kind of obsessed with this notion of personal growth for quite some time now. But it wasn't always that way. I used to think that self-help books were cheesy and that I probably could have come up with half the ideas myself. And let's be honest, we all kind of felt that way. Regardless, I've been learning and applying various teachings to all aspects of my life for quite some time. And I think I've come to discover a specific mindset which I think is a foundation to self-help, productivity, and personal growth. I used to think that people I aspired to be like were doing specific things that made them better. So I studied them, took inspiration from them, and even copied the tools that they used. But little did I know, it wasn't what they were doing, but how they were thinking. Before I got involved in self-development, I can honestly say I think I was someone who overestimated their level of intelligence. You could say that I was academically smart, yes, but there's so much information outside of that traditional education, information that holds tangible value in the real world, and I didn't possess much of it. And the mindset that really held me back was, if I've gotten this far, I can figure out most other things for myself. So when I started a business in medical school for the first time in my life, it was a lot harder than it ever needed to be, mainly because I tried to do everything myself without any external resources or mentors. And it just made me realize, damn, maybe I'm not as smart as I thought. The sad reality is that traditional education systems don't teach us everything we need in order to navigate the real world. Society doesn't place enough importance on knowledge that can't be measured. If it doesn't earn us a certificate, we can't prove its importance, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not important. So how do we go about learning outside of these institutions? How do we level up instead of letting our managers at work dictate that for us? It was only when I started to read self-development books that an important change started to come about in my life. And looking back on it, there was actually a specific mindset that I unknowingly developed that allowed me to, number one, soak in all that information, and number two, actually change my behavior. I know plenty of people who read self-help books and they might agree with what they've read, but it doesn't always lead to action. It doesn't always change their behavior. And I think that's because they haven't necessarily developed this mindset. There's a big psychological gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. Oftentimes we know that there might be a better way of doing things, but we stick to the status quo and avoid the discomfort of change. So what is it exactly that's stopping us from changing our behavior? Now you watching right now, let me ask you a question. Why do people use to-do lists? Is it too difficult for our brains to remember a few things we have to do today? And what's up with daily routines? Why can't we just go with the flow and get everything done in whatever order? Some people don't believe in these day-to-day tools, but other people swear by them. So what exactly is the difference between the two groups? The more I think about it, the more I realize that being more productive doesn't always require us to level up. Most of the productivity tools that we use are actually substitutes for things we can already do ourselves. Therefore, it must mean that if there was a secret to being productive, it wouldn't be something material. The truth is, all self-help only works on one condition, and that is that you admit partial or complete hopelessness in any given situation that you're in. You cannot look to something or someone for help without first admitting that you're in need of that help. Therefore, we need to adopt the mindset that we're not perfect, we don't know everything, and that there might be better ways of doing things before we create room for new thoughts and behaviors. We don't use to-do lists or calendars because we can't remember things, but because we know there's a chance we might forget. We admit a slight hopelessness when it comes to remembering, so we seek help from the to-do list. We seek help from the calendar. We've all probably experienced at least once a situation where we've been like, don't worry, I won't forget. I'll remember that. And then we forget. The calendar doesn't forget. The to-do list doesn't forget. Our stubbornness makes us want to do it ourselves, but self-help teaches us to just actively seek help. Just seek it. If you're still not convinced, think about the world's best entrepreneurs and thinkers. Why do they have assistants by their side organizing their days? If they're so smart, why can't they keep track of their own days? Even Jeff Bezos famously said that he only likes to make a few decisions per day. Nothing more. He said that if he made any more, he'd start to suffer from something called decision fatigue. By admitting that he'd be hopeless at decision making if he had too many decisions looming over his head, he decided to seek help in the form of a rule that specifically made sure he didn't make more than 3 decisions per day. Self-help, productivity, and personal growth all begin with admitting that hopelessness, which then creates room for you to seek help through books, tools, and mentors. Despite this mindset being what I consider to be the secret of self-help and being productive, it still isn't right to assume that the answer could be so easy, because it's not. The truth is, we don't have to simply adopt a new mindset, we have to get rid of our existing one, something we've held on to for a lifetime. Now let me tell you why this mindset is so complex and why it has so many different components to it. As with all self-help, we assume the prerequisite that number one, we're trying to do something. Number two, there's multiple ways of doing it. And number three, that there might be better ways of doing things than how we currently are. So let's pretend, for example, that we need to get to a destination and there's two routes to get there. This is route A, the unnecessarily long and treacherous route that we've somehow stumbled upon, but that's where we are now. But route B is the quicker and objectively better route to take. Now the obvious advice you would give to someone is to simply go back and take the better route, right? But let's examine this scenario and break down all the psychological components of the mindset needed which would allow us to change our behavior. Firstly, we need the self-awareness that we might just be on the wrong route and that there's a better one out there. Secondly, we have to have empathy towards our own mistakes. Without it, we'd probably continue down the wrong route out of our own arrogance. Thirdly, we have to have the willingness to turn around, in spite of knowing that others might be watching and judging us whilst doing so. Fourth, we have to build conviction in going back on ourselves in a world that likes to keep moving forward. Finally, we have to summon the motivation to get moving again, despite the fact that at any point along the way, it's always easier to give up and choose to do nothing instead. So the true secret to productivity isn't a single tool. It's not a specific piece of advice either. The true secret of self-growth, in my opinion, is a specific mindset that comprises of several ways of thinking that often goes against our natural instincts. To me, 99% of self-help is just learning to seek help. It involves being empathetic towards ourselves and removing the ego that stops us from admitting our shortfalls. After all, we're only humans, we're gonna make mistakes. So start thinking with this mindset and I can assure you, it will start making a big difference in your life. And that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, please drop a comment below with a lemon emoji so I know which of you have stayed till the end. Make sure to head on over to my website to see the weekly articles that I write and also my weekly newsletter where I share everything that I'm working on. Otherwise, do what matters and I'll see you next time.